Hello Internet! Since people who has been asking for me to do stuff on this channel has also asked me to do some humorous history, I figured that I would do a very quick video just detailing a few of my favorite historical anecdotes about people I have found either interesting or just funny throughout the years. Not all of these are necessarily completely true, some of them are, but I hope they will at least give you a quick chuckle, because they do give a certain insight into either the characters involved or the time in which they lived. So, yeah, my 10 favorite historical anecdotes at the current moment. Enjoy. Imagine, if you will, a crowded theatre in London in the late 1780s. A noble woman who has lived most of her life in Ireland but who is now living in London looks down from her seat and sees on the cheap ranks her son, who has been at school in France for the last year. She stares at him for a while as if she cannot believe it, turns to her companion and exclaims, "My God, I do believe that is my ugly son Arthur." It might come as a surprise to no one that the great Duke of Wellington had a rather strained relationship with his mother for quite a while in his life. The famous pianist Eugene had gotten married. This was certainly not the first time this had occurred, but this time he was on honeymoon in Italy, and he was sitting at a restaurant eating some dinner with his young wife when he suddenly threw down his utensils and exclaimed, "Blech! Dog food, but at least I've learned this, my love. The next honeymoon is not going to Italy." That marriage didn't last. That confidence is a good thing Napoleon Bonaparte more than anyone embodied. He, of course, had its setbacks, and at one point during his Egyptian campaign, the British destroyed his fleet at Aboukir. Napoleon at first appeared devastated, then turned around to his marshals and exclaimed, "Oh well, I can't be anywhere." Few can doubt the greatness of Mr. Abraham Lincoln. However, even during his presidency, he still remained in touch with the common people. At one point, Senator Charles Sumner came to visit him one morning and found the president polishing his boots. Sumner exclaimed in surprise, "My goodness, Mr. President, are you polishing your own boots?" To which Lincoln looked at him and asked, "Well, whose boots do you think I would be polishing?" He was a very great man. Prince Blucher, the great Prussian field marshal known as General Forward, always liked during his campaigns to be at the forefront of any battle, to cheer on and encourage his men with his personal example. That, of course, led to him being wounded with some frequency, and at one point a bullet passed through his boot and through his feet. When his men got him back to a doctor, and the doctor cut him out of the boot so he could treat the wound, Blucher looked sadly at the boot that was standing next to him and said, "This is the worst thing that could have happened. We have a lot more doctors in this army than we have shoemakers." The great French comedy writer Pierre Beaumarchais was called to the deathbed of his friend the Prince of Conti, who said that he didn't think he would survive this one. War, women, and wine had simply taken its toll on him. Beaumarchais wanted to comfort his friend, said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Prince Eugene was in 21 military campaigns, and he lived to 78. Marquis de Branco daily drank 6 bottles of champagne, and he lived to 84. Yes, but the love, the prince moaned. "Oh, don't worry," Beaumarchais then replied. "Your dear Mrs. Mother, didn't she live until 79? The prince died shortly afterwards. The great lawyer Clarence Darrow had held a speech at some women's society. It had been a great success, and at the end the president of the club came up and gushed at him. "Oh, goodness, Mr. Darrow, how can we in any way show our gratitude for this magnificent speech?" Darrow looked at her steadily, bowed down deeply, and replied in his most polite tone, "Madame President, Since the Phoenicians invented cash, that has been but one answer to that question. Philip IV of Spain was not one of the more fortunate Spanish kings. He had involved himself in several wars, he was inbred as all hell, and due to that he often lost them. At the end of those wars, when Spain has been highly diminished in size, he took the title the Great. One of his greater noblemen said of him then, "It is true, our king can be likened to a hole. The more you take away from him, the greater he becomes." The difference between justice and wisdom is to be shown in this particular anecdote about Henry I of France and his court jester. Now, this jester was, as part of his job, an outspoken fellow, and one of Henry's great magnates had basically said, either you stop making fun of me, or I will have you murdered. Henry then reassured his jester, "Don't worry about it, my friend. If he kills you, I will have him hung 15 minutes later." Very just. The jester, in all his wisdom, then requested, "Oh, but your majesty, would it be possible for you perhaps to have him hung 15 minutes before he kills me?" At the end, I shall return to the person who is probably my favorite historical character of all time, the Duke of Wellington. At one day during his time as in chief command of the British Army, an inventor arrived at his mansion at Apsley House to peddle a armored vest that he had created. One that would render soldiers completely impervious to harm, he claimed. Wellington asked him nicely to put the vest on, to which he happily complied, then told him that he never bought anything without actually testing it first, and called for a servant to bring him a gun. When the servant arrived, he found Wellington alone in the room. Wellington looked at him and said, "You can put the gun away, my friend. There was an inventor here to show me an armored vest, but he seemed to have vanished completely without trace." He was also a very great man. Well, that was it. 10 of my favorite historical anecdotes. I hope you enjoyed them. At least I hope you got a small chuckle out of them. If you want to see more, let me know, and I will try to do stuff like that in the future. Until next time, I have been Sage Cruncell. Have a nice day, and hope to see you all soon.